Hi folks, it's me Michaela and welcome back to my channel. If you have been around on my channel for a little while, you may know that I love to make myself a TBR that I am not going to read. I love to make a list and then not follow through on said list. So naturally, since the end of the year is near, 2025 is almost upon us, and I have not finished reading all of my 23 books in 2023 or my 24 books in 2024, I've made a 25 books in 2025 list. None of us are shocked. So I have made 25 books I want to read in 2025, and I'm going to be going through them with you today. And I feel this is my best attempt yet at making a yearly TBR that I am likely to read. I do have kind of like a few sections almost in the list, and I think it's going to be the most achievable yet. Now, is that going to be the reality? Who knows? We're going to find out in 2025 if I actually read these. But let's just talk about the books, shall we? I've also made myself a mocha to feel festive. The first few books I put on my 25 books in 2025 are the next book in series that I'm reading that I want to be making progress in. So the first book is The Winners by Fredrik Backman. This is the third and final book in his Beartown trilogy. I have read Beartown multiple times, and I read Us Against You, the second book, earlier this year, and it was a 5-star read. Highly recommend. And so The Winners would be the third and final book, and we know how much I love to complete a series, so I can mark it off on my series spreadsheet. Everything revolves around the spreadsheet. The Beartown series by Fredrik Backman, it is kind of like this ensemble cast story of following all of the people in a small town in the middle of the forest, and it's a hockey town. They really appreciate hockey. It's all about hockey. Everything in the town kind of revolves around hockey because they're like in the middle of the forest in Sweden, you know, there's snow everywhere. They play a lot of hockey. And in the first book of the series, it kind of goes through the events and the impact of the community after disaster. That's probably the best way to say it without any spoilers. I think it's a fantastic book. I think it's a fantastic series, and I recommend it to everybody, but I will say there are some heavy topics, so do read trigger warnings before you start. The second book is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect by Benjamin Stevenson. This is his second book in the Ernest Cunningham series. This is kind of like a cozy mystery series that breaks the fourth wall, or at least that's what the first book did. Everyone in my family has killed someone. I love the book. It kind of is told to you from the perspective of Ernest. He's like an author who's just some guy who, like he says, everyone in his family has killed someone. It's a mystery series that's quite humorous. Like I said, it breaks the fourth wall. He's like talking to you directly, knowing you're reading a book he's writing. It's a very interesting voice and perspective to read, and it's also a really good mystery. It's kind of like that snoozed in closed mystery feeling kind of story. Very good. So I'm really curious about how this ends up being a series because, like I said, Ernest is just kind of like some guy in this family who happens to solve this murder between all of his family members. So then how does he become this general person / detective who comes across more mysteries that he has to solve? Like, I'm just like highly curious how this as a series works, so I'm really excited to get to the second book. I believe there's also now like a third book that is Christmas themed, so it would have been great if I was just like more on top of things. I read the second book earlier this year, and then I could be reading this third Christmas book like now because it's Christmas time, but like, you know, maybe next December. The third on the list is The Wicked King by Holly Black. This is the second book in the Folk of the Air trilogy. I read The Cruel Prince this year, yes, because I got it as a birthday gift from my bestie last year, and I read it and I liked it. It's a YA fantasy novel, and It's kind of romantasy. There's a little like enemies to lovers moment. It's like fae and magic. Your main characters are like humans that are in the fae world, and it was a fun read. I really liked it. It was a quick read, and I want to see where the story leads. So I'm thinking I will probably have to reread The Cruel Prince, considering like based off of my memory right now, I do not remember much, but I do love to reread a book, and then I will continue the series with The Wicked King. My fourth book on my 25 books in 2025 is Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is the fourth book in her Chestnut Springs series. I have been reading Chestnut Springs, but after reading the third book and discovering that there's kind of like crossover Easter egg moments of characters from Gold Rush Ranch in Chestnut Springs, I paused my reading of Chestnut Springs in order to read all of Gold Rush Ranch. I still have 2 more books in Gold Rush Ranch to read, but I am planning on reading the third book in Gold Rush Ranch like later this week, and then I'm hoping to read A False Start, which is the fourth book, before the end of the year. If not, it'll be like very early in the new year, and then I'll be diving back into Chestnut Springs, and I'm very excited about that. I do love this series and this kind of like interconnected series by Elsie Silver. It is a contemporary romance series, and it's all cowboy romance. You know, you're on the ranch, they're riding horses, they're wearing jeans and cowboy hats and all the like, you know, what more can you ask for? The fifth book on the list is A Murderous Relation by Deanna Raybourn. This is the fifth book in her Veronica Speedwell mystery series. This is a historical, cozy mystery series. The first book is A Curious Beginning. I have read the first 4 books, and it seems like even though every year I say I want to read more of the books, I keep only reading like 1 book a year, and at this rate, I'm like never going to catch up in the series because I think the series has like 10 books in it. But either way, my plan is to read the next book, the 5th book in the series. It's a very fun series. Like I said, it's like a cozy mystery series. There's a bit of like an ongoing plot through the series, but each book itself is kind of an individual mystery that's being solved. Veronica is very like strong-minded feminist Victorian woman who's a scientist, and her partner in crime, or at least her partner in crime solving, is Stoker, and they have a wonderful banter, will they, won't they, tension, slow burn kind of relationship going. It's a great read. Definitely gives like the cozy vibes of cozy mystery. I then have Tales from the Cafe by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. This is the second book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, and I read the first book earlier this year. I really liked it. It's like a series of novellas, but the novellas each have like short stories inside them. There's like parts that are like stories that interconnect to be one story, but they're each kind of like their individual stories. It feels like kind of difficult to explain, but they're like short books. I really liked reading it, and when I read the Before the Coffee Gets Cold, I was like, the rest of the series is going to be great as that book you read in between your other books, as a palate cleanser, as a quick read, as just something a bit different, something short that you read before you are getting into like a huge chunky book, you know, that kind of vibe. Very great for that. The writing is wonderful. I love that it's like magical realism. It takes place in the coffee shop where if you sit at a certain table and drink a cup of coffee, you can time travel. Like, need I say more? It's great. Highly recommend. The series is extremely popular for a reason. I then have Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear. This is the 10th book in Seanan McGuire's Wayward Children series. This is a portal fantasy series of novellas. It's either following Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. I can never say that. Or you're following the backstory of one of the children at the home. I love this series. The more you read, the more you get of this extremely expansive world building. Basically, each child at the home at some point found a door that brought them into a different world that's very particular and perfect for that individual child, and then they have ended up now back in the real world, and they go to Eleanor's Home for Wayward Children to kind of cope with, you know, that experience. But it's super fun, and it's also very insightful. Seanan McGuire does a lot of wonderful writing of expressing certain viewpoints while also giving you just like an entertaining story to read, which I think is wonderfully great. This book comes out, I believe it releases in January, and I cannot wait to get my little fingies on it. And by my little fingies, I mean like put a hold on in Libby for it, because I don't actually own any of these books. Why are novellas like the same price as a full-size book? I just can't bring myself to buy them, despite the fact that I would love to have this entire series on my shelf. It's just like I cannot justify spending that much on a 150-page book, you know? Like, it just can't do it. I then have The Goal by Elle Kennedy. This is the 4th book in her off-campus series. I have been reading this. It's in a stack right here along with some other Elle Kennedy books. And I want to read this book because I feel like then I am done off campus and then I can decide where I want to go next with Elle Kennedy reading, because I know there is like a 5th book in off campus. It's called The Legacy, but if I did read that, I think I would read it on Libby instead of buying it, because I think it's kind of just like based off of it being called The Legacy, I think it's fun little like all the couples once they're together in the future kind of thing. I don't actually know, but it doesn't sound like it's the same as the rest of the series where each of these books is following a couple. I think like The Legacy is all of these couples kind of like after they are coupled. I don't know. I'm going to look into it. But I have put The Goal on the list. Long story short, I put The Goal on the list. This is a college hockey romance series. I find it's a fun time to read. It's not like my favorite series, but I do find it, like I said, it's fun. It's like popcorn reading. It's a cute time. I'm not against it. And I would like to be done the series because I love to finish the series. Not because it's like, oh, I want to be done with the series, but just, you know, like it's nice to finish a series you're reading. So the last book in this kind of section of my 25 books in 2025 of next books and series that I want to read is Somewhere Beyond the Sea by T.J. Klune. This is now the 2nd book in what is being called the Cerulean Chronicles, The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. I absolutely love this book, and it has now been made to have a sequel. And so I would like to read the sequel. I am a little wary of reading the sequel just because, as far as I know, this is not a planned sequel. Like, The House in the Cerulean Sea was supposed to be a standalone book, and so the fact that like a story has now been made out of somewhere where a story was not planned, I have concerns. Because I want to love it, but what if it just like cannot achieve what I want it to achieve? You know, like my expectations are high, and so I am worried. I am stressed. But I'm still gonna read it. I still plan on reading it because I want to know, and maybe I will love it, and then I'll be really happy that I did. You know, there we go. The House in the Cerulean Sea, if you are curious, it follows, oh, what's his name? It's not Ernest, because Ernest is the guy earlier in the Benjamin Stevenson's book. It follows this man who I cannot remember his name now off the top of my head. Could I Google it? Sure, but I'm not going to. But he is basically like a social worker who is sent to the home where a bunch of very difficult, magical orphan children are, and then the relationships that he builds there with all of the people at the home. It's like cozy fantasy. I think it's such a great read, and honestly I also feel like I should read that again. I'm just like making my list longer at this point with all of the rereads I want to do. Speaking of rereads, the next book on the list is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which obviously is the first book in The Hunger Games. I have read all of the Hunger Games books, the initial ones. I haven't read like the prequel or like the new ones that are releasing recently, but like the original trilogy I have read, and I read them like over a decade ago at this point when I was in high school. So I would really love to just like reread that series and like actually remember what happens, because it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, I read that book, and if somebody asked me what happened in that book, I would be like, you know, it's like I know the generalities based off of like, you know, the general cultural knowledge of the Hunger Games, but do I actually remember reading the book and what happened in the book when I was reading it? No, I do not remember that. So I would love to start a reread of this series now so that I could like refresh myself with them. I think it'd also be really nice to own them because I do remember really liking them, and I feel like The Hunger Games is a highly significant book series culturally, and I would like to own them and have them on my shelf. And if I'm gonna own them, like, I'm gonna read them again, you know? So I would love to start that this year. Do I need to tell you what The Hunger Games is about? I feel like I don't need to tell you what The Hunger Games is about. I'm just moving on. The The next book is The Hidden Oracle by Riordan. This is the first book in The Trials of Apollo series. I have read all of the Percy Jackson books except for the new releases, so I haven't read from Chalice of the Gods on because I've been wanting to read the rest of kind of like at least the Greek mythology side of the Percy Jackson universe before reading those books, because I don't want to be spoiled for anything. Chronologically, I know like the Chalice of the Gods is when Percy is older, so I don't want there to be like Easter eggs for things, and then like I go to read other Rick Riordan books and I like realize that I actually already know what happens in these because I got spoiled by reading Chalice of the Gods. So I have read all of the initial Percy Jackson books, and then I have read all of Heroes of Olympus, so now I want to pick up the Trials of Apollo, and I'm going to be starting with the first book in that series, The Hidden Oracle. I could tell you what it's about, but I have no idea because it's a brand new series. I know that it is Rick Riordan and it is Greek mythology, young adult fantasy. I assume Apollo is in it. That's all I got. Okay, that's all I got for you. The 12th book on my list is one that I'm mildly terrified about, I'm not gonna lie, and that is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in his Stormlight archive, and these books are the chunkiest books I've ever seen. I think like the 5th book just released, and like every single one of the books in this series so far is over 1,000 pages, and that like both excites and terrifies me. I have read all of Era 1 of Mistborn. I've now read the 3 of 4 books in Era 2 of Mistborn, and I'm planning on reading The Lost Metal pretty early on in the new year. I mean, we'll see what actually happens, but that's like my thoughts. And so then I was thinking, you know, what Brandon Sanderson do I want to pick up once I finish Era 2 of Mistborn? And I was like, is it time? Is it time to dive into Stormlight Archive? And then I just wrote it down on this list, so like now I have to do it, you know? Like I don't have any choice at this point. I know that like this is another high fantasy, huge book series that is also taking place in Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere universe. Most of all of the books Brandon Sanderson has written are all taking place in the same universe, and they're kind of like connected that way. So, you know, like there's going to be like Easter eggs potentially for like Mistborn and stuff in Stormlight Archive. At least this is like my knowledge of it. So I am excited because I have only heard great things about the Stormlight Archive, but like I said, this is a really chunky book. I am scared. So those are the 3 new series I'm wanting to start in 2025. And next throughout the list is really like just books I want to read. Like I just wrote down books I want to read, so you know, let's start. First is One Golden Summer by Carley Fortune. This is going to be her new release in 2025, and it is following the love story of Charlie, who is the brother of Sam in Every Summer After. Is that what the book is called? Yes, Every Summer After. So I'm very excited for that. I love Carley Fortune. I just keep sinking farther down into this chair the farther this video goes, but who cares? I'm gonna be like on the floor by the end of this video. So I'm really excited for this. I do love Carley Fortune. I do have one other Carley Fortune book that I have not read. I have not read Meet Me at the Lake. Could I maybe read that one before reading One Golden Summer too? Like maybe, but I put her new release One Golden Summer as the book on my 25 books in 2025 list. Like I didn't want to repeat authors or books in a certain series and stuff. I really wanted to have a bit of variety on this list, so that's why there's only the one Carley Fortune, though I am kind of planning on reading 2 Carley Fortunes in 2025, I'm not gonna lie. So number 14 on the list is Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This is her new release this year, and it was in the Goodreads Choice Awards. I thought I was going to read it this year, and I just didn't do it, and I feel like I've betrayed Sally Rooney because of it, so I am definitely going to be reading Intermezzo in 2025. Sally Rooney, again, is just another author I really love. I read Normal People and Conversation with Friends, and I loved both of them, so I'm quite excited for Intermezzo, even though I literally don't know what it's about. Like, I just wrote it on the list. I was like, Sally Rooney wrote it, like I'm going to read it. That was enough for me. I then put as number 15 The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennet. I put this on the list because I went to my want to read shelf on Goodreads, and I wonder what is the oldest book I marked as want to read. Like, what was the first book I marked as a want to read on Goodreads? And it was The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennet. And I was like, you know what? 2025, I'm going to read the oldest book on my want to read shelf. I think that's a fun thing to try and achieve. So I have put that book on this list, and I have heard really good things about The Vanishing Half. From what I'm aware, it is following the story of twin sisters and how they're black but can be white passing, and so one chooses to live as like white passing and one chooses to live fully like in her black identity, and then kind of the differences of their lives. I think, if I am wrong, like correct me, but that's like my general idea I have of it based off of my memory of what I've seen other people talk about it. Number 16 on the list is The Martian by Andy Weir, and this I put on the list because I want to try reading sci-fi, more contemporary sci-fi, because the only sci-fi I've read has been Dune, and that is like very classic sci-fi, and I have heard really good things about Andy Weir's writing, and I was like, maybe I should try reading an Andy Weir sci-fi novel, because I have heard that even people who like aren't sci-fi fans have liked his sci-fi books, so that's what I'm doing. I did it. Look, I'm broadening my horizons of reading, and I am planning to read science fiction, never before seen on my channel. I then have a few nonfiction books that I would like to read. The first is The Third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop. This is Kelly Bishop's memoir, and I saw it on the Goodreads Choice Awards this year, and I was like, oh my god, I want to read that. And then I marked it as want to read, and then I was making this list, and I was like, you know what? I have kind of become a memoir girly a little bit now, because I have read like 3 memoirs. So maybe this is my chance, you know, I'll write it on this list and it'll give me an extra little boost to read that memoir. I then put another memoir that also was on the Goodreads Choice Awards list this year, which is Sociopath by Patric Gagne? Gagne. I did not look up how to pronounce this person's name, I apologize. But I did see this also on the Goodreads Choice Awards, and it looked very intriguing as a memoir to read, so I have put it on my want to read list. And then the third nonfiction book I've put on my list is actually not a memoir. It's called The Wager by David Grann, and this is the story of these emaciated sailors who like washed up on shore in Brazil, and then like the wild story of what happened on their ship, The Wager. So it is like nonfiction, but it kind of sounds like very like story-based nonfiction, and it really intrigued me when I read the little synopsis. So I was like, you know what, this is probably a great opportunity and option as a like bridging point for me into more nonfiction reads, because it's still very plot story based, or so it appears. I'll find out when I read it. I then put The Wedding People by Alison Espak on the list. This was also, again, on the Goodreads Choice Awards list, but when I did my video on the Goodreads Choice Awards list, like, this was already on my want to read, and I apparently just, like, forgot I put it there. And so I'm like, you know what, I should read that, because I think it won. Did it win the general fiction prize? Maybe. So I threw that on the list because it looked interesting, and why not? I then also put, influenced by Goodreads Choice Awards yet again, The God of the Woods by Liz Moore. I was looking at this and it's like 1970s missing people in the woods kind of story, mystery thriller. It seemed really intriguing, and I also just really loved the cover. So I was like, ooh, I want to read that. Let me put it on a list. Because I love to make a list. I then put Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I feel like almost ashamed at the fact that I haven't read any Heartstopper books, and there's now like 5 volumes of it, and like everybody loves it and it's amazing according to like everybody, and I'm like, wow, I'm clearly missing out, and like maybe I should finally hop on the Heartstopper bandwagon. I guess I never really picked it up because it's a graphic novel and I'm not a graphic novel person, but then I read a graphic novel this year, which was one of the memoirs I read this year. After that, I was like, you know what, I didn't dislike reading a graphic novel, and maybe I should try and read some more graphic novels, and Heartstopper is just like such a popular one that I feel like I have to read it, and I also feel like I will enjoy it, so I'm gonna try and start reading Heartstopper this year. 23 on the list is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. I've had this on my TBR for like, I think a couple of years now. And then I saw that another Coco Malors book, again, was on the Goodreads Choice Awards list. I feel like just like so easily influenced. And I was thinking, you know, like maybe I should actually read Cleopatra and Frankenstein that I put on my want to read a couple years ago. Like maybe I should actually read the books I say I want to read. Like maybe I should do that instead of just clicking want to read on Goodreads and then like never thinking about the book again. So I did put this on the list. I then also put The Maid by Nita Prose. This is the first book in Molly the Maid as a series. And this was like a really popular mystery book when it released a couple years ago. I always get it confused with The Housemaid by Frida McFadden because I think The Housemaid and The Maid came out the same year and like they both had red covers and they both had maids and like my brain just couldn't handle that. So maybe I actually want to read The Housemaid, but I put The Maid on the list. I think I want to read both, but I put The Maid on this list. And that's what we're going with. It's a fun little mystery book. I do kind of feel like I should try and read more mystery thrillers this year because I feel like I always say I read mysteries and then I like look back at my reading and I'm like, wow, I really actually don't read a lot of mystery like ever, and I should probably read more mystery and thriller books if I'm going to claim I read mystery and thriller books. Like maybe. And then the 25th book I put on my 25 books in 2025 is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I know, like literally like a few minutes ago I was all like, I didn't want to repeat authors on my list, but guys, it's Fredrik Backman and I love Fredrik Backman, and I have now decided is my official goal to read everything Fredrik Backman has ever written. And so I've read Bear Town, I've read Us Against You, I'm going to read The Winners in the new year, I've read A Man Called Uwe, and I've read And Every Morning the Wake Home Gets Longer and Longer. That really long titled novella. I've read that. And I have been saying how I want to read Anxious People for such a long time that I was like, girl, just put it on the list. Just put it on a list. Just put it on the list. And so I put it on the list. And I'm really excited about it because I really want to read Anxious People. It sounds like such a fun premise. I believe it's like bank robber ends up in open house and takes everybody in the open house hostage, kind of, and then you learn the stories of all the people who are like in the situation or something like that. It sounds really good. I'm really excited. So that is the 25 books that I want to read in 2025. Do let me know down below if you've read any of the books I put on this list and your thoughts on them. Have you made a 25 books in 2025 list, or have you made any kind of yearly TBR for the new year? Do let me know. If you happen to like this video, make sure to give it a like, give it a little thumbs up. If you happen to like me, consider subscribing. I'd be happy to have you. And with that, I hope you're having a wonderful day today, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.